Okay, hi everyone. My name is Adam Walnut. I am the Managing Director of a research centre and stakeholder engagement partner, the YIMBY Initiative. We're a think and do tank, which I absolutely love saying, because we think about things and then we do them. I know, it's a shocking thing to do. We are here to encourage an easier time for house builders by making sure that we can build more things in the right places and to the right scale, densification, etc. We support Labour Growth Group, Growth Group as their secretariat, and we do the same job with Labour Tech, who've just launched a paper on quantum computing. So for those physicists in the room, we cater for all tastes. We've assembled a brilliant panel today on new towns. It has changed a bit from when we initially set out. So if you are going off the conference guide, you will be woefully out of date. I shall pass over to our brilliant panellists and I'll chair Lord Mike Katz.
Well, welcome everyone this afternoon to what I think is going to be a really exciting and invigorating discussion on the huge and very successful Labour YIMBY programme of events this conference. This one, as you know, is how to build new towns, a YIMBY route to 1.5 million homes, and an essential piece of the jigsaw, not only for Labour's whole house building programme, but indeed Labour's programme for success, regenerating the country, renewing the country, and indeed ensuring that we win the next election. I am not going to win. I'm not going to wear rather the Labour bucket hat. I am told that this is now absolutely kind of eBay. This is reaching 5 figures, but this is an absolute kind of collector's item. But it does have the slogan, build, baby, build. Labour's really going to kind of hit the accelerator. And so I think we'll want from our panellists a few kind of speedy, couple of minutes to introduce themselves and their topic, and the topic and how they feel the government want to approach it. Myself, I should say, my name is Mike Katz. I am a government whip in the House of Lords, and it's important to note that the Lords Built Environment Committee very recently issued a report which says, you can't develop new towns without proper infrastructure first. It isn't purely about the homes, it's about the transport, it's about the energy links, it's about the other healthy infrastructure, bits like health infrastructure and much else that allows these towns to thrive rather than it just being about development. So it's good to think about this in the round rather than it purely being about housing. I am very quickly, you'll notice we have a panel, we're waiting still for panellists. So in the meantime, I'm going to introduce very quickly the panellists we do have. On my immediate, my immediate left, my immediate right is Kevin Bonavia, who is the newly elected last year MP for Stevenage, involved in Labour Growth Group and one of kind of the finest YIMBYs this party has to offer. And next to him is councillor Shreya Nanda, who is co-chair of Labour YIMBY. We have Councillor Marland, who is leader and long-standing hero of Milton Keynes. Joining us will be Councillor Anna Smith, Cambridge City Councillor, Cabinet Member for Communities. We've got an all-pack lot in, so I'm sure just kind of sweep in. But in the meantime, I'm going to start by asking Kevin to kick us off with a few comments.
Thanks, Mike, and thank you to YIMBY for having me today. So I represent the country's, I would say, the best new town, but obviously, but there's no question, which nobody would know, we are the first at Newtown, and we were first promulgated by a Labour housing minister, Lewis Silkin, back in November 1946, on the same birthday, not the same, or he was a bit younger than as our leader of the council, Richard Henry. That was in November 1946. So our Labour government then had a vision. It had a vision to deal with the great scourges facing our society after the Second World War, one of which was that we had a massive housing crisis, partly but not wholly created by the Second World War. And that vision was new towns. And Stevenage was a pioneer, and the people who came to Stevenage were, and are still called, the pioneers, the pioneer generation. And that really was, an aspiration for people. And I still call Stevenage a town of aspiration. But 80 years on, nearly 80 years on, hi Anna, we are facing another housing crisis. And we have to use every tool at our disposal to deal with that. And this government's got a huge ambition of 1.5 million homes. And part of that response has to involve new towns again. But the challenge for new towns is so much greater than it was for towns like Stevenage in the 1940s and 50s, because simply, put, things are more complicated. Land is more used in a more sophisticated way. The challenges are there. So you need that political will. And this government, I hope, does have that political will. Last summer, we had Sir Michael Lyons came and launched a New Towns Task Force. And what he wanted to do was learn from existing new towns. And I hope today we can talk about some of that, the challenges that Stevenage has faced, and how do you regenerate and grow new towns, which is where we are now in places like Stevenage. But we do that with the ambition that this government has, that there are going to be, we've announced today, 12 new towns. But of those 12 new, and we're going to make them a reality. We have to learn from the new towns experience and how we can make them a reality for the future. So I'll stop there, but happy to discuss some of the challenges and the ambitions we have in Stevenage later on.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for that, Karen. Shreya, over to you.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here. So I'll just say a little bit about the topic we're discussing and then pass on. So obviously, we all know that tackling the housing crisis through building more homes is hugely important, whether that's because of raising living standards, helping to solve the fiscal challenges we face, tackling inequalities of wealth and ownership, or helping bring the economy out of stagnation. The OBR called planning reform the single biggest driver of growth in the government's growth model. So we know this is a hugely important area for the government. And I think the main problem here isn't a lack of policy ideas, it's the political challenge of how do we get public support for the measures that we know need to be taken. So, of course, I think it's hugely welcome that the government are taking strong action in a range of areas to tackle this problem, whether that's mandatory housing targets, building on the grey belt, investing £39 billion into social and affordable housing, and now the hugely exciting announcement of their New Towns programme. In terms of maximising the economic impact of these new towns, it's really important that they're dense, they're well connected in terms of public transport, and that they focus on expanding existing towns and settlements. And that is the case for the new towns that they proposed. So I think that's really welcome. I think making sure we have the right infrastructure is incredibly important for guaranteeing public support for new housing. We know from public opinion research that worries about pressure on local infrastructure and public services is one of people's biggest concerns about new housing development locally. So ensuring that that infrastructure is there up front to give people that certainty is one of the most effective ways of winning public support. And then in terms of public support, new towns deliver a lot of bang for your buck in terms of homes delivered versus the potential political costs. And then I think it also really marries with people's sense of wanting this to be joined up and coordinated, and that, there's been planning, thinking that's gone into this about building it around, a high street, around the infrastructure and the public services. And it also helps in terms of making sure that infrastructure is built in and that we're accessing those economies of scale to ensure that proper public transport can be at the heart of the new development, not just sort of car dependent development, which I think we have too much of at the moment. So I think the New Towns approach is exactly right for helping to tackle the housing crisis that we have. And it's fantastic that it's coming along with infrastructure investment, and the local councils in these areas are actively involved in making the case for this. I think that's absolutely key. And going forward, I think it's just key to make sure that the funding is there for this and that the government is focusing on delivery so that we can show the results by the next election. Thanks.
Thank you, Shreya. Very speedily, before it comes Battle of the New Towns, going to move over to Councillor Pete Marland, leader of Milton Keynes.
Yeah, there is no battle. No,
Fighting.
and I would say, in my Adidas trainers with bucket hats and Oasis reunions and being announced as a new town, I've never felt more in vogue or in fashion since my 20s. So I'm going to ride this wave for all it is worth. But whether it's Milton Keynes or Basildon or Stevenage, new towns are really important to not just the people that live there, but to our economy.
So what people don't know about Milton Keynes, often they've got a very sort of fixed view of Milton Keynes in their head. We're the seventh biggest city economy now. You know, we've delivered over 3,000
houses a year over the past 60 years. You know, that is delivery at a scale that very few other places, in fact, no other places have done for that amount of time, for that period of time. We are a population over 300,000 now, and we just continue to grow and grow and grow. And that is massively important because of where we are in the country. We are in the southeast. Now, I know that whenever certain mayors in the north talk, they always say London and the southeast, like we are the same place. London is not the southeast. London is London, and the southeast is the southeast. And Medway and Milton Keynes are in the same region. You know, Milton Keynes and Medway cannot be more different. But what we do have in common is that the southeast has actually got the third lowest spend per capita on public transport, on infrastructure projects. But because we always get lumped in with London, it is always London, and that's the same in the east. You know, particularly around London, the Stevenages, the Cambridges. It's actually we get sort of amorphosized into this big London area, and we are not London. And actually, we import more jobs per day into Milton Keynes than we export people out to London jobs, and yet people still think of Milton Keynes as a bit of a dormitory town. 1 in 3 jobs in Milton Keynes is in tech, and those jobs are in industries that are vital to this country. Defence industry, so we have HMGCC that do all the work to help our security services gather the information that they need. AI. High-end engineering, all these things are based in Milton Keynes as they are in Stevenage and Cambridge and places around just outside of the M25 corridor. So I would say it is absolutely about delivering the affordable homes that our families need, because everybody that moved to Milton Keynes, and we're not like a lot of new towns where people were forcibly moved out of their homes, particularly in city centres, and forcibly moved to some new towns as sort of city regeneration. Being the last of the new towns, people were offered, go to Milton Keynes. If you go to Milton Keynes and you work hard and you sort of put the effort in, you and your family and your family's family will be better off for generations to come. We are still one of the most affordable places in the southeast. But on top of that, we are vital for the economy. The Oxford, Milton Keynes, Cambridge arc is absolutely vital for the future of this country and the future of being able to invest. Because for every pound that the Treasury invested in Milton Keynes for the past 60 years, we've returned 14 to the Treasury. And that means that places like where I grew up in Burnley and Accrington and Blackburn, the money that is generated out of Milton Keynes can be reinvested in those places, because that's what a Labour government is all about. A Labour government is all about redistribution of wealth from one place to another. But we need to get out of this sort of idea that it's Milton Keynes or it's Cambridge or it's Oxford or it's Manchester or Teesside, because actually that's not how our competitors in China or America or India think about their economies. It is Milton Keynes and Blackburn, Milton Keynes and Teesside, Cambridge and Liverpool. And that's the only way we're going to get the economy moving and the economy moving forward. Housing and build, baby, build, because it's absolutely vital for our economy.
Thanks, Pete. And last but by certainly no means least, go over to Councillor Smith, Cabinet Member for Communities in Cambridge City Council.
Hi, and thank you, and sorry for being a little late. I was actually at another panel launching this fantastic quick plug Case for Cities report that's just been brought out, which is about, really picks up from what you're saying there, Pete, around that value of small cities. Is anyone here from Harlow? Hello. Yay! My mum grew up in Harlow. She was one of the first people to come out to Harlow Newtown. Her dad's job went out there, and she has nothing but praise for the way it was set out, the life she led there as a child. That was transformative, Harlow, for her. The power of that new town completely changed her life. She also met my dad there, so, you know, it changed all of our lives in many ways. But what does that look like in the modern world? Well, Cambridge, we're a very small city. Our boundaries, which were set in the 30s, cover 150,000 people, but Greater Cambridge, in terms of its economy, is around about 325,000 people now, projected to grow even more. Conservative estimate, we're looking at 400,000 by 2040. We've got particular challenges. We're a booming economy, but we are sadly, and this is not something that we take pride in, we're a city of immense equality. We're often found to be one of the, if not the most unequal cities in the country. We've got one of the worst health gaps for women in the country. There's an average gap of about 10 years life expectancy between places that are a few 100 metres apart. And a lot of that is because of those pressures on the city. We're very glad as a city to be building council housing. Since 2017, our Labour councillors become one of the biggest builders of council houses for a small city in the country. And we've done that as part of an innovative partnership with local builders that we set up on the devolution deal that came in for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. We built over 500 council houses through that deal. We've since well on our way to building 1,000 council homes. We've also built over 1,000 homes in total, because we believe strongly in proper council housing, but we've also got to build other housing too. I got married a few years ago. My husband and I were able to buy for both of us our first house together. We are not in our 20s, and it took two people on lifelong savings to buy a very small 3-bedroom house in Cambridge. That's the kind of pressures we're under. As a local councillor, I am constantly talking to people who are incredibly worried that there's a HMO, a house of multiple occupation, that was a family home next door to them. It's happening time and time again because there aren't any homes. Because people who come to live and to work in Cambridge, I was a deputy head in a school for many years. I had heads of department in their 30s and they were still living in shared houses. And that's the kind of pressures that we're under. So we need to build. We need houses. But what we need to make sure is that we build houses in the right way. And particularly for me, that's the right infrastructure. So some of you will know that I was deputy mayor of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough under the previous Labour mayor. And I was acting mayor actually for 4 months of that time. And I recently ran for mayor of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough for Labour. And during that time, I got to know 2 local examples really well. And it's a good example of something that's gone wrong and something that is looking much more effective. You may have heard of Northstowe. It is a large estate that has been built with no real planning. It has just sprung up. We spoke to residents who were promised the earth. They were promised all the things we're talking about. They were promised great transport. They were promised local shops. They were promised local sports clubs. 5 years on, there is still not a local shop. They still have to get in their car, go across a dual carriageway to the Tesco in Bar Hill, the other side of the A14. It is absolutely awful. And of course, because of that, beautiful houses, great people there, but the community is not flourishing, because it doesn't have the infrastructure. Now, there's a better example that is currently being built just up the road from Northstowe, and that's Waterbeach, because it is being plan-led. And the developers there, Urban and Civic in this case, are being infrastructure first. They are putting in GPs, shops from day one, even if they're in porter cabins. And what they're also doing is they're putting in things that benefit the local community from day one. There's a village there already, and they're making sure there are things happening which they can invite people to, which people can enjoy. So people are seeing the benefit of that development before it even happens. And I just wanted to say one more thing, which is we have to be infrastructure first. And for me, what I would love to see is that isn't just up to an individual developer. That's the way we just do that, whether that's through mayoral planning, spatial planning, whether that's through legislation. Because you've got to get the transport, the water, the skills provision. If you get all of those things right, you've got to get the community infrastructure, the GPs, the community centres, the libraries, the shops. If we get all that right, then we can build towns that are just as transformative as towns like Harlow, like Stevenage were a generation ago.
Anna, thank you very much. Just before, I'm going to slightly abuse chair's privilege, but not in the usual way. I want everybody in the audience, before we get into questions, if you're a councillor, or you've been a councillor, or indeed you're kind of you're elected, or in some people's cases, non-elected representatives in any other sense, can you put your hands up, please? Just get a view. So that is around about. Okay, that's really interesting, because one of the things that, thank you everyone, hands down. One of the things that I'm interested in, I just, and it sort of resonates on the comments you were saying at the end, Anne, is how you gain kind of political legitimacy, and how we use our Labour Party machinery, our campaigning machinery, to help build the legitimacy for these kind of, they're not just, a bit of infill development on an estate, but actually the bigger challenge of saying we're going to plonk a whole new town here and actually be credible, because of examples of the kind of first example you cited, when people can be very cynical about the way that you're just going to kind of build some houses in a slapdash fashion and not connect them up to anywhere else and not provide the necessary infrastructure, physical or in any other community in any other sense. So how do you do that? And do you think there's a real role that we're missing here, maybe through Labour YIMBY as well as other bits of the party, to help build campaign and build for that legitimacy?
Yeah. Can I start with that? So, I mean, you got to always, when you're campaigning, you have to tell a story. And the Stevenage story was, look, you can start a new life in a new town. Yeah, you get your job first. The council home will follow in a few weeks. Bring your family. There'll be a school, 15 minutes walk away. Shops, 15 minutes walk away. Work, a cycle away. 15 minutes, by the way, and that's actually, I'm positive about things being close to you, not trapped. You're not trapped in a new town, but it enables you to do things. So that's a story that we had before, but now that story is turned into a bit of a nightmare in terms for people thinking about their futures. So I've been knocking on doors in Stevenage where you come across a elderly couple who moved to Stevenage as kids with their parents. They were lucky enough to buy their own homes. 38,000 council homes, going down to 8,000 council homes now. Most of those are now owned, and they are living there with their grown-up kids and their grandkids. Okay, so where is that aspiration? Where is that for them now? So you've got to say to them, this is why we have to do this. We have to send that kind of urgency. Then it moves into what we've been talking about today, the right kinds of homes and infrastructure, because then we've got it in Stevenage now. We have got flats that are going up around the town. Now, a lot of that is not being what the council wants, because it's about control as well. So that's the other issue about new towns. One of the lessons from Stevenage is that in 1980, when the Development Corporation was transferred to the borough council, what was not given over was a lot of real assets in the town centre. They've ended up in lots of private companies, pension funds, and so to regenerate, create those new homes, new shops that we now need for our generation, it's much, much harder. So the lesson is control, and so we're going to have that infrastructure Anna's talked about. That's what we need control. So tell people that if you want those new homes, you've got to empower your local representatives to make it happen.
Shreya, from a Labour YIMBY perspective, how does this fit into kind of the wider picture of Labour campaigning?
Yeah, of course. And I think when we're talking about new developments, it's absolutely the case. We need to make sure the infrastructure is there, the affordable housing is there, that we're capturing the land value uplift and using it for community benefit. But then I think also when we're thinking about campaigning, it's about making sure we're hearing from a range of voices in the planning system. So at times in planning, we can hear disproportionately from people who are older, who are wealthier, who are more likely to be homeowners. So it's about making sure that we're hearing from a wider range of the community, that young people, private renters, they're engaging with the planning system as well. Social tenants on estate renewal projects, we're hearing from them as well.
Thank you. Pete, anything to add on this?
We're just unashamedly pro-growth. We've campaigned 12 years. I've been leader, and every single year we basically go with a manifesto that says we're going to build, and we're going to build even more. And Chris Curtis, who obviously is a great friend of the Labour YIMBY movement, and was very specific on his personal manifesto last July, which was basically, we don't have enough houses in the southeast. We have to build them, but we have to do it in the right way. So we do deliver the infrastructure in Milton Keynes, and I've got two people from Milton Keynes in the front row. Our new estate, MK East, it's 15,000 houses. For every 3,500 houses, you get 3 schools, you get a doctor's surgery, you get a community centre, you get the health centre, you get the secondary school, you get the community facilities, you get the play areas, and it's about taking people on that journey. Because if you just have 200 houses, I'm sick and tired of hearing council leaders say, "Oh, we built all these houses and we haven't got the infrastructure." It's like, well, how many did you build? Well, we built about 300. And it's like, well, why did you do that? You spread it out, didn't you? You were trying to spread out the pain, so to speak. You sort of mixing it up. You were spreading out your number in your local plan. So don't complain that you don't get the infrastructure, because 250 houses does not bring in the level of 106, or we call it tariff or SIL, to deliver these community facilities. And so we just call out the Tories on that sort of, like, you can infill an estate and build 50 houses and expect to get a school out of it. You can't. So there's a level of honesty and levelling with voters, which is, if this is what you want, we build a strategic level development, which is above 3,500.
That's really interesting. Anna, from your experience kind of on the mayoral campaign trail, and obviously Cambridge and Peterborough was a very kind of mixed urban rural combination area. How was it in terms of on the doorstep trying to persuade people of the need, particularly those that weren't in the more densely populated areas already?
That's quite
the
interesting.
need to build more.
I think one of the things that came across really strongly in that campaign actually was people did largely support an infrastructure first approach. So they were supportive of the concept of mayoral spatial planning and that ability to see things in a whole area position, because that does allow you to say that place isn't so good and that place is good. And I think obviously there's always a realization that some areas could be really good for a new town and some areas would be less good for a new town. And mayoral spatial planning allows you to do that. One of the problems with very small local plans is that you've all got to get your numbers in quite a small space, and that can cause some difficult decisions. On the whole, that infrastructure first approach went down very well. What I would say, and this is also, I think, has come from my experience in councils as well, we have to take on the Greens in this, because what we are finding is that our local Green Party claim to support council housing, but they always support council housing, but not there. Yeah. In our whole 1,000 homes that we have built, I can tell you they've never found there an appropriate place anywhere. And they consistently push on this, and yet somehow manage to still portray themselves as a party that's supportive of social housing and opportunity. And I think we have to be really clear in taking on people, because what they're doing is that our local Green Party, quite frankly, they are scaring people. They are using all of those concerns about lack of infrastructure, lack of GPs, lack of schools, and they are worrying people about new homes that will be in everyone's best interest. And I think that is a real problem. So I think we've also got to think about taking on the Greens.
Fab, thank you. Right, well, over to you. We've got hands up. I'm going to take them in groups of 3. And for questions or statements, but whichever, please make them nice and short. And please tell us who you are and which CLP or union or organisation you're from. I'm going to start with the woman in the white blouse there. I have to say, I'm going to play privilege here, and my noble friend in the front row, and the lady with the black jumper right at the top there. So I'm going about the audience, but why not?
They could move a lot more.
Keep you active after lunch, sorry.
Exactly. Hello. My name's Aliv, and I'm a councillor in the London Borough of Enfield, and we're one of the potential new towns, and we're very, very exciting. I really welcome the infrastructure first approach, absolutely. And what you said around the story, how we take people with us, it's an important year for us in London. We have local elections. We need more of that how to tell the story. And not everyone is thrilled in Enfield, especially the Tories. They're very upset, but we're delighted. Thank you.
Right.
Jeff Rooker, House of Lords. Just over 20 years ago, I was John Prescott's Regeneration Minister, and in order to get a kickstart at that time with Milton Keynes, we had to reconstitute the Development Corporation. Now, without that, because the calculations you made per school, number of houses, that was all there. But it was really important to get going. The Development Corporation for us was the only tool. I mean, we've learned our lesson from London now. The mayors might have some powers, but I don't think they've got the powers of a development corporation, which really can cross the boundaries for a short period of time to win support for the infrastructure. And my last point is, I've just bumped into someone a couple of hours ago in the hall there that used to lobby us. He's a builder's developer, and he just said to me, this is 20 years ago, he's still working on it. He said, everybody's talking about things, but there's nothing coming through. That's his worry. It's all talk and nothing's coming through. So when's it going to start to come through?
Thanks, Jeff. I feel very guilty now. Really guilty.
Thank you, my flag earlier. I'm very, very proud. I'm very proud to say I've been twins. My brother's been twins with Milton Keynes, so I've been out campaigning for Pete's councillors. I've also went out to Peterborough, Cambridge to campaign for Emma, and learnt a lot. Sorry, Stevenage, you're up next. Your constituencies in the process. So there's a couple of quick things I want to say. One is around planning, and all the infrastructure points you made. Completely agree. In terms of taking on the Greens, there has to be something about biodiversity, nature that can be built into really good developments. Connection with nature is key. Fending off future flooding is key. There's been really good developments with wetlands built in. So I'd love to hear what the panel has to say about that. And then the other thing I particularly about this in Peterborough, I'd love to, again, congratulations to Enfield. Genuinely, it's so exciting. I would love to go through something like that in Hackney, but a very small footprint. All our new building is sort of infill. And my big concern is a lot of my residents are moving out of the borough. So when you create all these housing, you're likely to get, residents coming to move in from boroughs like mine, leaving social care behind, leaving, their family connections behind. And I'm sort of wondering how we kind of work together to sort of have some balance.
Okay, well, we've got quite a wide range here. And I was talking about the need for a story and thinking about the way that we counter, people's fears about larger developments. Jeff was talking about development and corporations and actually how we kickstart the growth. And Caroline, I didn't see you up there properly. You're really up in the gods. Again, about the green attack and also how we build keep communities cohesive when you've got people moving out because of the housing crisis. I am going to mix it up a bit, and I'm going to start with Shreya.
Yeah, of course. Great set of questions. And on the development corporations point, absolutely. I think we see that with current examples like Old Oak Common, where we are using that institutional arrangement, and it is really key to get that right. And then I think there is also this point about why things are slow in the housing market at the moment. And we know that there are, a range of difficulties, the interest rate rise, the building safety regulations that have come in that are slowing things down. So I think it is really important that the government looks at those and makes sure we're doing everything we can to ensure that delivery is there. I'll pass over for the other questions.
Anna.
Yeah, I wanted to come back a little bit on that issue around what we can do in our developments with nature, because I think that's really important. And what I find sometimes is that our political opponents will seek to suggest that there is somehow a divide between being environmentally friendly and growth and building, and actually that's not the case. So we're seeking to build all of our homes in Cambridge, our council homes, to Passive House standards. And when you build a high spec, environmentally friendly house, that's great for the environment, but it's also great for the people who are living in those homes because the bills are lower. And when we go and we retrofit our existing council housing stock, of which we have a lot that is in desperate need of retrofitting, we're cutting the bills. So I think that's really, really important that we're considering that. And I think the social justice angle of building homes, good quality homes for people to live in, I think is really important. And I'm not sure if it's the absolute relevant place to put it, but I'm going to throw it in here anyway, because we talked about renters. The other thing is thinking about leaseholders and and I'm really glad to see the Labour government is starting to move against leasehold, and there's a lot of MPs working incredibly hard to deal with those management companies that run a lot of these leasehold developments who are not serving people well. So you get people in really low grade housing and it's not being maintained properly, and that's a real problem. We have to address that too. It's about reassurance.
I mean, storytelling is really important, isn't it? That people exist on the need for a story. People exist on the need for a narrative. And so Milton Keynes, it's a I before E narrative, an infrastructure before expansion narrative, is that we will deliver the health centre, we will deliver the new school, and the Prime Minister came and visited where we've built it already and we haven't even had the first house yet. Not in porta cabins, actual, high grade, brand new school, brand new health centre. And by telling that story, that existing community is not going to be affected by overflowing GP waiting lists, the fact that it is good for builders and good for developers to be able to show families the school that the child will go to, that is there and not 2 miles away. It helps them sell houses. It helps you overcome the worries of the existing community, and it's just good for everybody. That sort of moves around to your point about, where are all these houses? And the point is, we do need to hold developers to account on some of these things. So we have some of the highest environmental standards in Milton Keynes, and yet, because our planning service has been so degraded in terms of just capacity, developers sign off their own sort of completion certificates. I live in a new build house because I had twins and had to move to a brand new. They didn't put the hedgehog holes in. They didn't put the Swift bricks in. They haven't finished off all those little bits and pieces where you connect in a little bit of road and a little bit of path, and it just destroys the community's faith in the next house builder to come along and the next house builder to come along. Because as much as I think the government have done a brilliant job of getting rid of a lot of the excuses of developers to not just get on and build, particularly on green land, not green belt, but particularly on fields and sort of and farmland. Completely different question, I think, in city centres. So Manchester, Milton Keynes, lots of city centres, Leeds are struggling to get housing away at the moment, and that is ultimately down to the bond market, isn't it? Currently a yield on a property is 4.5%. It's the biggest yield ever on property, highest ever yield, but a bond is currently 5.5%. So if you're a pension fund, why wouldn't you take a 50-year AAA bond that will absolutely guarantee a 5.5% payout over the 50 year of that bond, over even a marginal risk around housing and a lower return? Greater Manchester have done brilliant things around using their pension funds to get people building, but trying to take on the bond markets will only make that worse.
I'll start with Jeff. You talked about development corporations. I mean, absolutely. The history shows, and even in the present now, we've got great examples of a development corporation really using its powers to get the job done. And these new towns are going to need that too, but they'll be starting, with the ambition of within this pond, and that's great, but it's not fast enough. It really, really isn't, and it's one tool. We've got to use every single tool at our disposal at the moment. We've mentioned a couple of the points there. Building safety regulations. I've had that. I've met house builders in Stevenage. They're really worried about this. It's really slowing things down, and their investors are thinking about going away. So we have to unlock those in part at the moment of the planning infrastructure bill. So the legislation's going through, but we've been in power for a year, and that's big legislation. But we have to do everything on top of it, because if we don't, There's another story out there. We heard about the Greens, being total NIMBYs all the time. But on the other side, we've also got a populist right. We've got Reform now, because they're now feeding into, right, there aren't homes there, but these new homes that are coming out, because while people are waiting, and the grandkids I'm telling you about, well, that's not going to be for them, is it? No. It's going to be for illegal migrants. They're going to get these homes. So we have to deliver. We have to show examples of people moving into these new homes, starting those, because if we don't, there is trouble ahead. So I cannot stress the urgency that this government must do absolutely everything, not just through legislation, not just through having new towns, but actually using the pressure, the soft pressure that they have, that we as MPs as well, putting pressure. I'm working with my council on delivering some of those homes there, but there are log jams there, and we have to remove them and use every single tool that we've got.
Thank you. Right, more questions. I'm going to try and keep them slightly more localised. We've got lady in the front, gentleman three in there, and the gentleman behind him with the black jumper.
Hi, I'm Sukhinder, and I wanted to just draw on my experience with the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park in East London, and it's taken 12 years to build really high quality, high density, a good community space there. And it does take time, but what it also takes is that combination of infrastructure and connectivity. And I just wonder if there's enough coordination between housing, transport, and some of the other infrastructure requirements.
Thank you.
Hi, Alex King, journalist at Planning Magazine. Probably a question for Peter and Anna. So you'll be aware that the New Towns Task Force recommended new towns being sort of Milton Keynes and Chelmsford, and they recommended that those be delivered through development corporations. Development corporations typically require a couple of dozen planners. Are you worried that those development corporations could poach your planning officers?
Get pieces around. Yes, please.
All right, my name's Nigel Lee. I represent Solway and Penrith. I am actually a Scouser, and I was a trustee on the board of trustees of the Town and Country Planning Association, who you will know probably very well. We've been banging out about this subject for 100 years. One of the main issues I've always thought was just the acquisition of land, a value that is a value that can accrue effectively profits into providing that infrastructure rather than paying massive profits to landowners. That's house price land rather than agricultural land. Because that seems to be a massive key to success or not.
Thank you. So we've got Sukhinder talking about coordination between the various different bodies that provide different types of infrastructure. Alex, very kind of specific question about planning, but tying into what you said earlier, Pete, about planning capacity and the availability of planners. And Nigel asked about land banking and how we can actually get land to be used in a useful way rather than just as a financial instrument. I'm just going to start from the left and move along. So start with you, Pete.
So no, I'm not worried about losing planners, and I'll give you an example why. Is that there are enough planners in this country just about, but the offer in the private sector is we'll pay you some money, and the offer in the public sector too often, particularly, and this is a great sort of why LGR is possibly necessary. Too often in the public sector is come and work for our small district council with LPA powers and plan to make sure no houses happen. And I don't think anybody goes into planning as a planning officer to not do things, particularly for Conservative-led or Lib Dem-led or even, God forbid, Green-led councils who don't want housing. No planning officer trains for so many years to stop something. And so it's a really difficult sell if you're a council to say, oh, come here and not do something. Whereas councils that really don't struggle to get planners are councils that say, come here, work in policy, work in development control, but what you will do over the course of working for the public sector in the next 5, 10, 15 years, you will be able to point to for the rest of your life as something that you have contributed to society. You know, the people that planned Milton Keynes, or the people that planned Stevenage, or the people that plan really good examples of new homes in Hackney or Ealing, which is another great example of places that grow, they can point at that and say, I delivered that. And that must be that is a draw for any planner, you know, and I think that is the same for development corporations. I wouldn't see development corporation, as long as there is some local legitimacy and accountability that there wasn't in the 1960s and 1970s. I don't see as it being in conflict with local planners. I would hope that actually it would be a shared service, for instance, and that's really important. There was another question. What was the other question about? There was another question. Land values. We don't live in 1960. We don't live in 1945. We can't just go around, and there is a balance between speed of delivery and the very best thing that we do. But I think there is a midpoint where you could probably, most of the land is optioned at a very high value. The government could probably intervene and say, yes, sell to that farmer. Probably not at agricultural value, but still way below the value that they're asking for residential. The farmer or the landowner will still get a drink, but at the same time, we'll be able to extract that value and invest it into public facilities. But I don't think the idea that we could buy land at agricultural value is realistic anymore in 2025.
Thank you, Anna.
So I will come to that question, but somebody asked about connectivity, and so I will try and keep this brief because I get really geeky when I start talking about transport. And I was mayor's lead for transport in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and one of the things I think is so exciting about what this Labour government has done is that ability to franchise and make franchising easier for everyone. The hoops we had to go through that were left by the previous government, who just about let mayoral combined authorities franchise, but only just, were appalling. And it's wonderful to see that bureaucracy is being cut down, because when you have a franchise network, and we did manage to take back control of our buses, sign that franchising order, so proud of that, you end up with a strategic transport network. And you end up, instead of just bus companies deciding what they want to run, and they're running it for profit, and if that's not profitable, they will just cut it and they'll give you the statutory notice period, which is very short. You can start thinking about how you plan a network. And that is transformational, because then you can think, where are people studying? Where are they working? How do we connect communities up? It is absolutely vital. And you're right that there's other aspects of connectivity, water connectivity, Wi-Fi. We've got to make sure those networks are appropriate. And I could talk for hours about the importance of strategic transport and connectivity. It's so important. In terms of your planner's question, well, I think part of that is who runs that development corporation, because of course in some cases that may well be, and you touched on this, in partnership with local authorities anyway. Workforces are fluid, and I don't think that any one part, a council shouldn't be kind of going, well, we expect you to sign up when you're 18 or 21 and then you're there until you retire. I think workforces are fluid, but I think the other thing is councils can't compete normally with, and you mentioned this in terms of the private sector, in terms of the salaries, but we can do other things in terms of good working conditions and a sense of purpose. And again, that comes back to what you were saying. We're in a shared services agreement with South Cambridgeshire District Council, and they are experimenting currently with a 4-day week. And they're doing that partly to look at recruitment and retention. And it's early stages, but the evidence is suggesting that is working really well in terms of saying, okay, we can't pay you the same level of salary, but we can give you these working conditions that are really attractive. So I think there's a balance. But no, I genuinely wouldn't say that my concern is, if there's a development corporation, will it poach our planners? So I think actually, and in Cambridge, we are discussing, Peter Freeman has frequent meetings with the council. We're discussing the whole structures around the case for Cambridge. And I think it will be teamwork.
And Thamesford is in central Bedfordshire.
Just testing.
Yeah, I mean, I won't add to what's been said about planners. They seem quite confident about that, or land values. But again, we need to get the balance right. But I do want to follow up what Finn is saying about sort of joined up across being joined up across the different services. We've touched on it a little bit, and we could have a whole different fringe event about what local government reform would mean for the house building programme, but I think it is critical. I was once a unitary councillor, and what I found as an MP representing a constituency that has one county council and 3 district councils within it is everything just takes so much longer. Outside of Stevenage, I've got 4 villages, and there is a huge blockage around Nebworth, where actually there is consensus, would you believe, in the community. They want more homes for their kids and for what it will mean for the local area, but they ain't going to be happening because we cannot get agreement on the local transport infrastructure, not just buses, and I'm really pleased what we're doing on that. And again, that would work well with unitary authorities, but just getting the local roads. We just need a couple of new local roads. But the county council highway team saying no, and I have to take it up to government. I'm pushing. My district councils want it, but the county council's blocking it. We've just got to unlock this. Now, don't get me wrong. We're having a housing revolution. We're having a local government revolution. They're all happening at the same time, and that brings its challenges, because where's all our focus? But I wish to God we'd had this done. The 1970s had that stuff. I wish we'd had local government reform done much sooner. But we are where we are, and I think we need to get on with it, and just get so we can just use those tools which is being stimulated up at the moment.
Yeah, and I'll just make a few points to add to what's been said. Again, great questions. I think on the connectivity point, as you were just talking about, it's important that these decisions are made at the right level, and sometimes with big public transport projects, that is the strategic level, the mayoral level, the combined authority level, and that's why it's so welcome and so important to make sure those powers are devolved to the right level and are joined up, so that those decisions can be made in a joined up way rather than different levels working against each other. I think there's also a point about funding and making sure that we're making the right growth case for these public transport investments, because they are really important for growth. And one of my worries is that we don't always capture those transformative growth effects in the way that we should be doing when we look at the projected economic impact of these investments. And then just quickly on the point about land acquisition, I think it is really important that we try and capture that value uplift for the benefit of the community, and the government has announced reforms to compulsory purchase orders, and I think that's really welcome, and that's something that we're keen to use in Islington, where I'm a councillor, to make sure that we're bringing those benefits to the community.
Thank you. Well, we've got time for I'll begin the wrapping up signal. Righty-ho. Okay. We haven't got time for another. But what I am going to do a very kind of quick fire thing just to finish off and say thank you is, we've talked about local government reorganisation. We talked about the government's, obviously, the planning infrastructure bill. We've talked about the bus services bill that's going through. I'm thinking purely from kind of a primary legislation perspective, as you might expect, being a government whip. If there was one more thing you think one more lever the government could pull to really build, what would it be? And I just want punchy answers. Who's going to go first? What's missing from the toolkit?
I can start in the short term. I do think it has to be stuff on the building safety regulator and looking at some of those building safety measures, because they are causing such a backlog. And that's really disrupting things, both for people who want to build new homes and for repair works that need to happen in an existing home. It's really affecting people like my residents in Islington are having to wait a year or more for a new lift to be put in. That's just unacceptable. So it needs stronger action.
Anyone else?
I think it's that ability to understand soft services as well as hard services. So we can build as many GP surgeries, and that we've built 3 in the time that I'm leader. There aren't enough GPs in them. So people still will say, I can't get a GP appointment. I can build buildings, but I can't make teachers, and I can't train GPs. And so I think the possible benefits of devolution is devolving that to local mayors and to devolve the right skills, the right powers in the right places to allow those mayors to be able to direct things like, this is a growing area, so we need more GPs, etc., etc. I think that would be really helpful.
I'm going to slightly cheat and do 2. One is something that's already been worked on, but I think we just need to keep pushing on it, and that is skills and training, because we need the workforce, we need the skill builders, we need the people who can build the eco homes, we need the engineers, we need the planners. On a very kind of techie point, I think looking at some of the S106 rules, because if you, for example, take S106 transport, it tends to fund a bus service for a couple of years and then it all tails off. And then the danger is that bus company, I'm not really obsessed with buses.
Fine by me. Fine by me.
But I think if we can reform S106 to give it the flexibility that local authorities need, I think that will be really helpful.
Okay. Simply say I agree with all of that. But for me, it comes back down to what I said earlier on, control. And we need to really give people who know their communities the control to actually shape them. And time and time again, I come across people feel so frustrated. They know what they want for an area, but they can't do it. So that's why I'm very, very keen, and not just on local government reform, but the devolution agenda. That's the real prize, I think. And that's what I really want to push for.
Well, I'm very pleased that Anna mentioned skills in terms of the actual construction trade. For my money, I think a real problem is that we don't have enough people to actually build the 1.5 million homes we've been talking about, and that's obviously a bit of a problem. But thank you so much to Pete, to Anna, to Kevin, to Shreya. I'm sure we want to show them our appreciation. And thanks to you.